Hi, my name is Rufus Brown, and in this video I continue my analysis and commentary on the increased China-Japan tension. When Japan dispatched senior diplomat Masaki Kanai to Beijing this week, the mission was simple: de-escalate the crisis that was triggered by Prime Minister Takaichi's remarks, which I broke down in our last video. The goal was to smooth over the survival-threatening remark, reassure China, and stop the economic pain. But this mission didn't just fail. It collapsed spectacularly and publicly. The entire outcome was summarized in one dramatic moment that China orchestrated for the cameras. Chinese diplomat Liu Jinsong left the meeting, looked directly at the press, and without even offering a customary handshake to his Japanese counterpart, he announced he was dissatisfied with the outcome. That single deliberate snub sent a clear, chilling signal. Tokyo's attempt to simply explain away the Taiwan red line has been rejected. Beijing is not interested in diplomacy. They are interested in capitulation. I believe this failure confirms two things. First, the crisis is not about words anymore, it's about strategic intent. And second, the cost of challenging China's core interests has just become permanent. Japan tried to use soft diplomacy to end the economic punishment, and as that diplomatic snub proved, they only made things worse. The core reason this diplomatic mission was doomed from the start lies in the non-negotiable demands of both sides. This isn't just a political spat. It's a conflict between two deeply held, existential security doctrines. For China, the demand is simple and absolute. Japan must retract Takaichi's comment and issue a clear statement affirming its commitment to the 1972 communiqué, the document that effectively normalized relations by having Japan acknowledge Beijing's view on Taiwan. China views any public linkage between a Taiwan invasion and Japanese military action as a violation of sovereignty that threatens the PRC's national reunification. They see this as a test of their resolve, and they cannot afford to back down. But for Japan, the retraction is a political impossibility. Prime Minister Takaichi is part of the conservative wing of the ruling party. Her comments weren't a careless mistake. They were a deliberate, calculated expression of the new reality. Retracting the comment would instantly trigger a massive domestic political crisis, alienating key conservative voters and damaging the credibility of Japan's 2015 collective self-defense legislation. To retract is to essentially tell the US that Japan would stand idle in the face of a Taiwan crisis, which severely weakens the US-Japan alliance, the bedrock of Japan's security. If Takaichi were to concede, she would be seen as surrendering Japan's sovereign right to defend its own supply lines and interests under pressure from Beijing. This created the perfect diplomatic deadlock. Kanai was sent to Beijing with nothing to offer but polite assurances, while Beijing demanded an act of political self-destruction that Takaichi could never deliver. I believe Japan correctly calculated that accepting the economic pain is strategically better than surrendering the right to self-defense. They chose a costly but firm stance of deterrence over a futile and humiliating capitulation. This failure confirms that the disagreement isn't over semantics, it's over the strategic future of the entire Indo-Pacific region. The purpose of the diplomatic mission was to stop the bleeding. The failure of that mission means the bleeding continues, and I can now put a clear price tag on China's strategic anger. The first, most visible impact is on tourism and aviation. Following the travel advisory, Chinese airlines reported a staggering 500,000 cancellations of tickets to Japan between November 15th and 17th alone. To put that number in perspective, this is the largest single mass cancellation of flights I have seen since the earliest days of the COVID-19 pandemic. Airlines like Sichuan and Spring are quietly canceling entire routes for months, citing company planning reasons. This is not a short-term blip. This is the systematic dismantling of a market that accounts for nearly 30% of all tourist spending in Japan. The effect was felt immediately on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Shares in major tourist-dependent companies, like cosmetics giant Shiseido and the fast retailing group, which is Uniqlo, plunged by as much as 9% in the wake of the initial advisory, reflecting billions in lost market value. But the coercion campaign is not confined to the pocketbook. It is extending into the very fabric of bilateral relations, trade. In a sharp escalation, Beijing has reportedly reimposed a full ban on Japanese seafood imports, a move that immediately hurts hundreds of Japanese exporters. This echoes the use of trade bans China employed over the Fukushima wastewater release, proving that economic punishment is China's preferred tool of first resort. Culture and academia. The tension is now moving to people exchanges. At Beijing's request, an annual Japan-China academic survey was cancelled, and various local cross-cultural friendship events have been called off. Worse, the screening of at least 2 Japanese films was indefinitely postponed in China, a clear signal that even passive cultural exchange is now subject to the geopolitical freeze. I call this China employing the full coercion model. When Beijing doesn't get diplomatic capitulation, they apply pressure to every vulnerable point: travel, trade, stock markets, and culture. The message is simple: the punishment is escalating, and the cost of maintaining the Taiwan Red Line is going up every single day. The clearest proof that Beijing is not interested in genuine de-escalation arrived not in a diplomatic pouch, but in a simple schedule announcement. Chinese Premier Li Kong will not meet with Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi at the upcoming G-20 summit. On the surface, this is just a meeting cancellation. But in the high-stakes world of global politics, a G-20 snub is a deliberate, public statement of hostility. G20 summits are precisely where leaders go to diffuse tensions and hold low-profile, face-saving bilateral meetings. By refusing the meeting, China is effectively saying that dialogue itself is contingent on Japan's submission. And this is the strategic takeaway I want you to focus on. This crisis is no longer about one politician's hypothetical statement. The target is not Prime Minister Takaichi. The target is the entire US-Japan alliance and the increasing regional trend towards strategic clarity on Taiwan. China is using Japan as a geopolitical lesson for every US ally in Asia, from Australia to the Philippines. The message is, if you dare to publicly commit to intervening in a Taiwan contingency, you will suffer immediate, comprehensive, and sustained economic pain, and we will cut off all high-level diplomatic channels. The failure of the Canai mission and the G20 snub confirm that the window for cooling off this situation is closed. I believe the crisis has now entered a structural phase. This means the tensions are no longer cyclical, driven by historical dates or annual shrine visits. They are now embedded in the core security policies of both nations. Japan has committed itself to its alliance structure, and China has committed itself to a policy of unwavering retaliation against that structure. The strategic ambiguity that kept the peace is gone, replaced by a new, dangerous period of confrontation defined by economic punishment and military readiness. Japan's high-stakes diplomatic mission to Beijing was always a gamble. By refusing to retract the Takaichi comments, Tokyo saved its strategic credibility. But by publicly snubbing the Japanese envoy and escalating economic and cultural sanctions, Beijing has confirmed that this crisis is no longer a temporary friction. It is a structural reset. The diplomatic failure marks the moment of no return. The strategic ambiguity that had maintained an uneasy peace for decades has been replaced by 2 mutually exclusive red lines: China's non-negotiable demand for Taiwan reunification and Japan's non-negotiable right to exercise collective self-defense. I believe that we are now fully in a new period of confrontation defined by these 2 immovable demands. Every economic sanction, every cancelled film, and every snub at a global summit is now part of a sustained campaign to force a change in Tokyo's security posture. China is willing to endure the short-term reputational cost to ensure its strategic goals are met. This standoff between 2 of the world's largest economies will have profound consequences, not just for Asia, but for the global supply chains and political blocs that depend on them. The world needs to understand the true price and gravity of this diplomatic failure. This crisis is far from over. The G20 summit is next, and any new escalations, whether military or diplomatic, will be analyzed immediately on this channel. If this deep dive helped you understand why diplomacy failed and the new confrontation has begun, please take a moment to like this video. And be sure to subscribe to Last Thing Before Sleeping, and hit that notification bell, so I can keep you updated on every crucial development in this defining world matter. Thank you for watching. This is Rufus Brown signing off. Sleep tight. Good night.